Hello, my name is Crystal Grant, and I work as an academic coach with Graduation Alliance. Prior to coming to Graduation Alliance, I did work in a high school, pretty much doing the same thing. I worked with credit recovery and helped students get on track for graduation. Now, making that transition from working with students every day in person to working with full-time online students was definitely a concern. I was worried I wouldn't be able to motivate them or keep them engaged, but I definitely want to tell you it can be done. Even though we have students that are working online, they're still able to be successful and they're still able to graduate. I'm going to go over some of the tips and strategies that we have that really help and going over some key concepts with you today in today's webinar. So, one of our key concepts that really help is accountability. So exactly how can we hold students accountable? I have 6 tips here that I want to share with you about 6 tips to help with accountability. So the first one is we need to set those clear expectations. In order for our students to perform, they need to know exactly what is expected. Before we hold someone accountable, they need to know what exactly our goal is for them, what the expectation is for them. So make sure these are clear right off the gate. We can provide these in a syllabus if you have them acknowledge it and sign it. We can provide them in an email or during your initial conversations with the student. We definitely want to provide those. And we don't just drop these expectations, hope the student understands what they need to do. We want to revisit these often. We want to remind students of these expectations. And then next, we want to be specific with these expectations. Clarify what you expect to be done and when you expect it to be done by. So, how often? Do you have a goal that you want students logging in a certain amount of times each week? Do you want students online a certain amount of times each day? How much? Do you want students completing a certain amount of assignments each week? Or do they need to hit a goal of completing a certain amount of credits each month? So let's say your online students need to think of this as regular school, where the expectation is they need to be logging in Monday through Friday, just like they would be attending school. And you have a minimum amount of 10 assignments that need to be met each week. So we definitely have the conversation that this is just like regular school. I expect you to be logging in every day, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, and hitting at least 10 assignments each week. So in order to make that happen, you need to do a minimum of 2 assignments each day. It will ensure that you're successful in meeting this goal and that you are making progress. So we would have that conversation and lay it down and really break down the plan for them. So students know what they need to do. We're all on the same page. What happens when these expectations just are not met? We definitely want to seek an explanation here before we accuse anybody, before we make those come down on the student about why they weren't performing. We want to see what exactly happened. So this is where we really want to use those probing questions. We want to give students a chance to explain what happened. And when we ask those probing questions, those open-ending questions, those questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no, we find out more information. We find out what the struggles really were. And then we can separate the excuses from the barriers. Did the student have a legitimate reason for not meeting those expectations? Or was it just a simple, yeah, I didn't feel like working, or I rather play video games? So with those reasons, with those excuses, we really want to use our motivational skills to get those students re-engaged and back on track. If it is more like a legitimate reason, mental health issues, medical reasons, or they had a problem with technology that prevented them, then we can work with creating a plan and getting that student on track. But I will say though, for working in an online program, I really don't have very many students with legitimate technical issues that prevent them. Most of my students are super tech savvy. They know about the latest apps, they know about websites, they have a greater range of um, technology knowledge than I do at times. But when we do find out what the reason was, whether it is even motivational reasons or a more legitimate reason, we can include the student and come up with a plan. I think of our team, our academic coach team, as problem solvers. Whatever excuse we get, whatever reason students give us of why they're not able to complete work, we always come up with a solution and a plan to get them back on track. So a lot of my students do work full time Monday through Friday, and they feel very overwhelmed balancing school and work. So I definitely would reach out to my student and include them on the plan. I would ask them when their off days are, if they have the weekend off, Saturday and Sunday. I would ask them when they feel most productive. Is it afternoon, night, morning? A lot of times it's afternoon. Okay, great. So Saturday to Sunday, let's come up with a plan to have you log in during the afternoon and start working on classes. If you're overwhelmed during Monday through Friday with work, then the weekends are going to be really our time where we're focusing on our school. Next, we want to share the impact. Share the impact, share the consequences of what not following through means for the student. And this is where we really want to explain. Students are often unaware of how their behavior really impacts them. We definitely don't want to come down on them, make them feel bad, but we want to have an honest and open conversation with them so we can really make things better moving forward. Always want to reset these expectations, remind students of these expectations, have the conversation, don't just tiptoe around the issue, really jump in and have it head on. And then make it specific again. If we need to break that plan down again, if we need to break those expectations, goals down, this is when we're going to do it. We are going to let them know what's exactly expected, when they need to have it done by, all that stuff. So all of those students that are super self-motivated, just run with it. They have their own motivation. They don't really need a lot of direction. They just do it. So what do we do when these students meet our expectations? Always, always reward the positive and coach the negative. We want to make sure we are reinforcing that good behavior. What did the student do well? Make sure to acknowledge and praise those students. And about those students that are always self-motivated, a lot of times they can kind of tend to fade into the background because they don't maybe they don't ask a lot of questions, they don't reach out to us a lot for help, but we really want to make sure that we don't forget about these students. We want to check in with these students as much as possible. We want to make sure that we don't always assume that they're okay just because they're always meeting those expectations, hitting those goals. Don't assume that everything's okay. Make sure we still have those conversations with them to see how things really are going. So we do have some additional strategies in place that can also help with accountability. Accountability buddy. It's very helpful to recruit someone to help by checking in with the student and making sure the progress is being made. Parents, guardians, other family members who are actually at home with the student can really help, especially if they are super supportive and they are supportive with the student's overall goals, because we can't be with the student all the time, especially in an online setting. So those parents, those family members that actually are there with them can really help us by making sure students are performing and working at home. So when we are contacting with parents, making contact with our parents, we want to make sure to include them and let them know what the student's overall educational goals are and make them a part of it. We want to share the successes with the parents. Even small victories should be acknowledged. A lot of times, if we're only sharing negative news about the student not doing enough work, the student not logging in, parents are going to get tired of that, and they can even block us out and not even want to take our calls or anything, or text, not respond. So I always try to share positive things. Even if a student isn't performing, I always try to find something positive to focus on and let them know it's not too late to get back on track and what we can do now. Also want to make sure we're updating them on the progress. If students are falling behind, reach out to the parent, let them know. But like I said, keep it positive. If they didn't hit this goal, if they didn't meet this expectation, this is what we can do moving forward to make sure they can still get back on track. And then we need to find out what communication method works best. Is it a phone call? Is it an email or group text? Work pretty good for the parent and student. A lot of times, I have parents that don't really answer phone calls, but when I text them, they're very responsive. So yeah, just find out what method works best. And then following through. When students don't complete their work, we want to have that conversation about it, find out what happened. If we ever have a plan set in place for that student, or we gave them an extension, we want to make sure we're following up with the students to make sure that they are actually working and that they're going to hit this goal. And I know sometimes it can be overwhelming if we have hundreds of students that we're working with. So we definitely want to make sure we have some kind of organization put in place here, whether it's a teacher log, a tracker. We want some kind of system where we are making notes so we can keep track of what student has a plan, what student has an extension, so we know exactly what we need to follow up about. And lastly, we want to remind students of the bigger picture here. We always want to remind them of our expectations, but we also want to remind them of what the overall goal is. For my students, it's graduation. So if you're not working with high school students, maybe it is moving to the next grade. Whatever the student is working towards, let's remind them of that ultimate end goal. And a helpful messaging here is when you can really tie it into their overall goal. For instance, I like to tie in my messaging to the students to graduation. If a student isn't really meeting those expectations, I might mention this to them, have this conversation. The amount of work that's being put in right now is not going to get you to your diploma. Can we come up with a plan to change this? So I'm mentioning that diploma so they know, okay, graduation. This is my bigger goal here. And if I want to encourage the student, I kind of let them know where they're standing right now. So a message I might use is, after finishing these two classes, you'll be a full credit closer to graduating. So again, I'm reminding them of that graduation goal. I'm reminding them, yes, you guys can do this. That tassel is worth the hassle. So I hope these were helpful, and I hope you guys can really incorporate this when you work with students. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this webinar.